Yo, listen to me real careful right now. A 31-year-old black woman flies to Africa for her birthday, comes home in a box with no engagement ring, no phone, no luggage, no nothing. And her own family just told the world that's not their focus. Nah, you read that right. The people who are supposed to be screaming for justice just shrugged on camera, while the man who proposed to her 2 days before she died vanished into thin air. And the family really thought this was the move that would shut us up? Before we dive in, like, subscribe, and don't miss this. Ashlee Robinson, better known as Ashlee Janae to her millions of followers, was found unresponsive inside a luxury villa at a Zanzibar resort on April 9, 2026, just 4 days after her fiancé Joe McCann proposed on her 31st birthday trip. Her body was flown back to New Jersey weeks later, but her engagement ring, cell phone, and personal belongings never came with her. The family really thought saying those items aren't our focus was gonna fly. Now let's look at the receipts that show why this whole thing is backwards. Alright gang, let's go straight to what people actually said on record, because the quotes don't lie, even when the people saying them do. In her sit-down with 6ABC's Cheyenne Corin on April 14, 2026, Ashlee's mother Yolanda told reporters point-blank, "He told me that Ashlee did something to herself and that she was being taken to the hospital. I said, what happened when? And he told me it had been 11 hours prior. 11 hours, brew. When I heard that I had to do a double take. Your fiancé is laid out and you wait half a day to dial her mama? Joe really said that and expected people to take him seriously? Nah." Then the father, Harry Robinson, dropped this gem in the same interview. "Never done anything that would ever lead me to believe that she would do something to harm herself." Cool, Pops. But 2 seconds later he says he doesn't know where Joe is, doesn't have his address, hasn't pulled up. That's the dumbest flex I've ever heard. You concerned, but you ain't curious enough to knock on the man's door? The TMZ exclusive on April 14, 2026, hit even harder. Asked directly if Joe asked for Ashlee's hand in marriage before the trip, the family said on camera, "Yes, we have met him." Yes. Confirmed. They knew Joe. They met Joe. The proposal wasn't a surprise. Remember that. It's gonna matter in 30 seconds. Now, the medical paperwork. According to the Tanzanian hospital's medical report obtained by 6ABC, according to her husband, he found she hung herself on the door. Husband. Not fiancé. Husband. They weren't even married yet. Fam. So why is the hospital report calling him that? When I read that line, I was like, nah, this is different. A second hospital then listed her cause of death, and this is where it gets nuclear: cerebral hypoxia by strangulation and suffocation. Strangulation. Suffocation. Those are not suicide words, gang. Those are homicide words sitting in plain English on an official document. And then there's the Cheyenne Corin update from late April that broke the internet. Some of Ashlee's belongings, such as her engagement ring, are missing. That is true. However, that's just not the family's focus as of now. Bro said what? Your daughter got smoked overseas. Her ring is gone. Her phone is gone. And you're not focused on it? That's where the family lost the plot. Now that we got the quotes, let's connect the dots. Here's where it gets ugly. Gang. Y'all didn't notice this though. That hotel staff visit happened at exactly 7:30 p.m. local time on April 8, 2026, right after the resort had already separated Ashlee and Joe into different rooms, following what the New York Post described as an explosive fight. So the resort knew there was a domestic. They knew it was hot enough to physically split a couple up on a honeymoon-style trip. But they are rolling around at 7:30 p.m. asking if she needs towels? Make that make sense. Remember that 11-hour gap? It dropped between the moment something transpired in the room and the moment Joe finally rang the mother. But here's the receipt nobody's talking about. The resort told the parents they had already been notified by Joe 5 hours before that call ever came. So Joe sat on the news for 6 hours after the resort already knew. 6 hours of silence, fam. That's terrible timing, brew. That's the move of someone who's desperate to get his story straight. That hospital paperwork listed Joe as husband before any marriage license existed on this earth. That's not a typo. That's somebody, allegedly Joe, telling Tanzanian officials he was already her spouse to gain access to medical decisions and the body. Any smart person would have corrected the record. But Joe isn't smart. And the family relationship dynamics? Ashlee was raised primarily by her mother, while her biological father lives in a separate household in Delaware. So how did the resort know which parent to call? How did a hotel in Stone Town, Tanzania, get the home number of a mother who lives in South Jersey? That's not standard procedure. That's somebody handing over a contact list. And 9 times out of 10 that somebody was the man holding her phone. Here's the kicker. Tanzanian police confiscated Joe McCann's passport and held him for questioning, but they have never officially named him a suspect. So they yanked the man's travel documents, but he's not a suspect. Opposition. Really thought nobody would connect those dots. That's when you know the system in Zanzibar is playing games. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Now check this out. Nobody's talking about the furniture. Zoom in on that one phrase from the medical report. Hung herself on the door. On the door. Not from a ceiling beam, not from a balcony, not from a closet rod. A door. Real talk. Go look at any standard hotel room door in your house right now. The top of it sits maybe 6.5 feet off the ground. Ashlee was a grown woman. For her body to suspend, her feet would have to be lifted off the floor, but a door doesn't give you that drop. That's not how gravity works. That's not how strangulation by hanging works. That single word door tells you somebody wrote a story they didn't think through. And opposition really didn't catch that? Embarrassing. Now zoom in on the word charger. The room attendant gave Ashlee a charger and came back 10 minutes later. 10 minutes. In 10 minutes a person has to tie a ligature, secure it to a door that physically cannot hold a hanging, climb up, get into position, and lose consciousness, all without the staff hearing a sound from the next room. That's not a suicide window. That's a window that requires a second person already inside the room doing the work. And here's the chilling part. Investigators in similar Zanzibar cases have documented women being strangled with phone charger cords. Same item, same room, same hotel chain pattern. Decode the medical phrase unidentified mark around the neck. Unidentified is the loudest word in that sentence. A clean ligature suspension leaves a specific pattern. Angled, V-shaped, riding up toward the A. A manual strangulation leaves a horizontal bruise. Doctors call it unidentified when it doesn't match the suicide story they were handed. That's a forensic red flag screaming through clinical language. And the title designation on the paperwork, husband, isn't an honest mistake. In Tanzanian medical administrative practice, the spousal designation grants release rights to a body. Whoever wrote husband wasn't being romantic. They were unlocking a door. If opposition had half a brain, he would have known that document would resurface. Now let's see how the media covered this. The framing war on this story is wild, gang. Fox News framed it as a closed case, leaning on Tanzanian authorities who ruled it a suicide and called it a misunderstanding. They basically gave the Zanzibar police the last word. Convenient framing for a tourism economy that would lose millions if foreigners thought a black American woman was murdered at a luxury resort. But CBS News framed it completely differently, emphasizing that Joe McCann was being held and his passport withheld. That's not the language of a closed case. That's the language of an open homicide investigation that nobody wants to call a homicide investigation out loud. The BBC went a step harder, highlighting the family's exact words and that 11-hour communication gap as the central red flag of the case. The British press is willing to publish what American outlets are dancing around. Now some people defending the official narrative are saying, if Tanzania ruled it suicide, why are you all questioning it? Here's why that doesn't hold up. That same ruling was issued before the autopsy was complete. You don't rule a death before you autopsy the body. That's not investigation. That's PR. And opposition supporters trying to defend that timeline are the same people who thought the found on a door story made physical sense. The receipts don't lie. But here's what nobody is saying. Mainstream media wants you to believe this is a tragic suicide story with some missing items sprinkled in. Some are framing it as a domestic dispute that escalated. Here's what they won't tell you, and this is gonna make some of y'all uncomfortable. This case isn't really about Joe. Joe is the face. The real story is about an international tourism cover-up machine that has been running on black American women for years, and Ashlee just walked into it. Think about it through the angle of industry politics. Fam, Zanzibar's economy lives and dies on luxury tourism. American influencers are the gold demographic for Tanzanian resorts. They bring eyeballs, content, and bookings. When something goes wrong with one of those guests, the resort has a financial incentive to protect itself first, second, and third. That's why the suicide verdict came out before the autopsy. That's why hotel staff allegedly discovered the body instead of police. That's why the medical report uses softening language like unidentified mark. This isn't beef, it's a masterclass in liability management. The resort isn't in handcuffs because the resort is the economy. That hospital paper we broke down, that document isn't just a medical record. It's a legal weapon. Whoever drafted it gave Joe spousal status he didn't legally have, which means whoever drafted it was protecting somebody. And it wasn't Ashlee. The industry needs this case to die quietly, and they are giving themselves exactly what they want. Now apply the historical pattern angle. We have seen this before. Shanquella Robinson in Cabo. The black women who've gone missing in Mexico, Jamaica, the Bahamas. Same playbook every time. She fell. She drank too much. She did it to herself. Local police rule it fast. Body comes home stripped of evidence. Family gets a runaround for months. Ashlee's case isn't unusual. It's the formula. And opposition is repeating the same mistakes that ended past suspects' freedom, except this time the international jurisdiction loophole is letting him walk longer. Now let me hit you all with a real forbidden take, the authenticity angle. The family's behavior on camera is not how grieving black mothers move. I've covered enough of these cases to know. There's a stillness in those interviews that doesn't track. No tears, no broken voice, no rage at the man who proposed to their daughter and then ghosted them while she was on a slab. Instead, we get her belongings aren't our focus and a $50,000 plus GoFundMe that hit goal in record time. That's not grief, that's logistics. And I'm not saying anybody did anything. I'm saying the energy is OFF, fam. The energy is OFF. Real parents would be on a plane to Zanzibar right now, not booking a funeral home before a complete autopsy report comes back. The mainstream won't touch this because pointing fingers at a victim's family is career suicide for a journalist. So they pump out fluff updates and call it reporting. Our opposition, as defenders in the press are puppets, and the resort industry is pulling strings. That's the truth they won't tell you. And that's the truth they won't tell you. So what happens next? Mark my words. Gang, 3 things are about to unfold, and you'll need to be ready. That independent autopsy is going to come back inconclusive. Watch what happens. The American Medical Examiner is going to look at organs that were already cut out, examined, and stitched back in by Tanzanian pathologists, and they are going to issue the only honest verdict a doctor can issue under those circumstances, consistent with strangulation, manner of death undetermined due to chain of custody issues. When that happens, Joe McCann is gonna look desperate, screaming silence into the void from whatever country he's hiding in. The family is gonna get a piece of paper that doesn't say homicide and doesn't say suicide, and they are gonna bury Ashlee anyway. The silence is gonna hurt the case more than any indictment ever could. The FBI gets pulled in. If enough public pressure builds, and it will build, because the internet doesn't forget, the State Department is gonna catch enough heat that the Bureau opens a parallel investigation under U.S. jurisdiction since Ashlee was an American citizen who died abroad. If that happens, Joe is not ready for what's coming. We saw what federal investigators did to past suspects in similar overseas cases. They pulled flight manifests, hotel security footage, and credit card receipts that local police never bothered to pull. Joe doesn't stand a chance if the feds actually move. But they have to move first, and that requires you'll keeping the noise up. Looking at the bigger picture, this case is gonna change how black women travel internationally. Influencers are about to start posting their itineraries with embassy contacts attached. Travel agencies are gonna get sued for not warning clients about jurisdictional risks in countries with weak forensic infrastructure. And Zanzibar tourism is about to take a hit it hasn't seen in a decade. 5 years from now, people are gonna look back at this as the moment the black girl luxury travel era got a serious wake-up call. Joe's name is gonna be a cautionary tale on every true crime podcast. He's watching the culture move on without him, and there's nothing he can do about it. Whatever happens, one thing's clear. Joe McCann already lost. Thanks for watching. If you want more real stories like this, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Turn on notifications